State your name, your association, your position on the bill.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Will Adams. I'm the president of the Texas Trial Lawyers Association. It's a pleasure to be here before you, Chairman, Vice Chair Farrar, and this committee. My remarks will be brief, but I would like to start by saying, Chairman Leach, we appreciate your open-door policy, your willingness to meet with us on short notice. We do appreciate that. Secondly, the same goes for the stakeholders in this case, in particular Corbin Van Arsdale and Wade Long. I'd like to thank them personally for reaching out and having open discussions. I think it's important and it's productive. If the association that they represent is a reflection of them, it tells me that they're good people. And I believe that.
That's good.
I believe that the vast majority of contractors are good people and want to do good work. As I understand, the purpose behind this bill is to make sure that monies go to the defect for which the school district sued. I think that's good policy. If the two goals are number one, holding the wrongdoer contractor accountable, and there will be those situations, and two, making sure the money goes to the defect that was sued upon, I think this bill actually might create obstacles to those goals, particularly in the dismissal provision. Once the lawsuit is dismissed, there's great potential that neither goal will be satisfied, that the contractor will not be held accountable, and two, that the funds that would be gotten from the lawsuit would go to fix the defect. Because the obvious statement is, if there's no money in settlement or verdict, there's no fixing of the defect. So to answer a couple of concerns on the dismissal, from my view, any type of dismissal would be bad to satisfy those two goals, whether it be 10 days or 60 days. It does not say dismissal with prejudice, Chairman Leach. Mm-hmm. The problem is that a judge, from my view, would have the ability to interpret it as such, because it just says dismissal. It doesn't say without prejudice. Even if it said without prejudice, if you get beyond the statute of limitations and it's dismissed, it's done. And there's no ability to satisfy those two goals. So I would recommend removing the dismissal provision and finding some other motivating factor that would force, for lack of a better term, the school districts to give the notice as required. Some sort of abatement rather than dismissal, similar to in the first-party insurance arena. So very, very quickly, the Attorney General intervention, being able to intervene when they merely believe that something is not happening, I think could unnecessarily complicate and confuse litigation, drive up costs with no penalty to the AG for jumping into a case they should not have jumped into. I promise my remarks will be brief, so I will end it there and answer any easy questions.
Thank you. Representative Nyabe.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your testimony. Are you aware from your research, are there any other similar statutory burdens like this on school districts?
I'm not aware of any. That doesn't mean there are not any.
Okay.
But I can do some deeper research and answer that question.
Okay, thank you.
So it's my understanding that this bill is only applying to a situation in which bond funds are utilized.
That's how I understand this bill as well.
So there's a situation in which the taxpayers, the citizens, have approved a bond, voted in an election, and said, yes, school district, we're giving you this amount of money to build these facilities, this school, let's say. And there's a defect, there's a design defect. Those defects are remedied. And to Representative Johnson's point, if there is material safety concerns, then those defects are going to need to be remedied fairly quickly. And then in that situation, Mr. Adams, would the school district's insurance policy not step in and cover some of the cost immediately related to those defects?
That's a very good question and would have some sort of subrogation right in that regard.
So then the scenario would be that if the school district wanted to pursue the contractor for those damages and actually got an award and or settled out of court, so there's proceeds coming in from the contractor, that all this bill would require, in addition to the report and the Attorney General's power to come in, all this bill substantively would require is that those funds be used for that purpose, for those defects, and not used to go build another school or to build a new library or to hire more staff or to buy new technology, that those funds are actually used for the purpose for which they were intended.
And from a personal perspective and from the perspective of, I believe, a majority of lawyers that I represent, they believe that's good policy.
But this bill's not really regulating the attorneys as much as it is regulating the school districts.
I believe that's true, other than the requirement of the notice of the lawsuit, which could lead to dismissal. My fear is that you're going to find there are bad apples in every bunch, whether we're talking about lawyers or contractors or whoever. You're going to find a lawyer who's not aware of the law or just decides not to follow it, and as a result, the school district and the taxpayers and the kids that are in that school are the ones that are suffering. That's what I want to avoid, is the dismissal leading to an inability to fix dangerous defects.
Sure. Well, I agree, and I know that Representative Holland's intent with this bill is to ensure that that we identify and weed out the bad actors and that we support the good ones. Because the last thing we want to do is to pass a bill that's going to have the unintended consequence of taking contractors out of the market, the good contractors out of the market to bid and to build schools. I don't believe that that's the intent of this legislation at all. What this legislation is intended to do, it's my understanding, and Representative Holland can refute this if I'm wrong, is to provide a process by which there's just more. I view this as a transparency bill, through and through, transparency for the taxpayers that supported, paid for these bond elections. And so if we can work out some sort of compromise or negotiated language where the 10 days is made into 21 days, and we can figure out what the best policy is, but the ultimate goal here is transparency. That's how I view this legislation.
And I do as well, and from what I can see, you're trying to incentivize the school districts to do that, to use the money for the defects that were sued upon. My fear is that the incentive might be too draconian.
Okay. Representative Krause.
Thank you, Chairman. Will, is there a way, absent a notice of lawsuit, to get to the same thing we're trying to get to? Because I agree with Chairman Leach. I think the purpose of this, I don't even think it's so much to incentivize schools to use that money for the purpose. I think it's to ensure they use that money for the purpose, whether they're incentivized to or not. It just seems to make sense if you get judgment money for a certain project, that money should go to that project and not be used to GR. So is there anything absent that notice of lawsuit that could still accomplish the same purpose?
I think later in the bill it talks about sending itemizations of what you've used the money for, which is part of the AG oversight process. I don't have heartburn over that. Others might. I do not. There's already a notice provision in the statute as it stands right now. I think the problem might be that people aren't following it. So you're looking for teeth. I completely understand that. The teeth as they are now are too sharp.
Okay. Members, any other questions? Yes, Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my understanding in my initial reading of the bill that all funds net of cost and attorney's fees must be used for repairs. Is that right? Is that your understanding?
That is, I haven't honed in on that particular part, but I believe that to be true.
Okay. And I too think it's good policy and whatnot. I just am trying to figure out, because sometimes you bring suit for more than just the damages for repairs, right? There'll be other elements of damage, correct?
Sure, if you've got deceptive practices, fraud.
Or if you had the roof cave in on a computer lab and you had to, and I'm just showing my age because I don't think they have computer labs anymore. The roof caves in on the air conditioning unit or something like that, and you have to, and you need to be compensated for what you lost in that. That wouldn't necessarily be a repair, right?
Agreed.
Or there could be
Replacement costs.
There could be diminution in value, maybe, that you could also elect, right?
I would imagine, yes.
So there might be some things in the bill that we kind of need to shore up in terms of what the element of damage is, right?
Sure. Make it clear that if you receive money for a defect as opposed to property or personal property damage, that sort of thing. Make a distinction.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions?
Those were not all easy questions.
Mr. Adams, thank you. Thank you for your testimony, and thank you and your organization as well for working so amicably with our committee.
It's our pleasure.